I'm going to say something, and I want to still be loved, okay? It's something very provocative regarding networking, all right? But let me begin by saying that behind every successful person is a group of people. And behind every unsuccessful person is a group of people. If you want to change your life, change your relationships. Let me say that differently. 15% of your success in life will be based on hard skills. But 85% of your success in life will be based on your people skills, your EQ, your emotional intelligence, not your IQ. As you grow older and wiser, you will ultimately learn that your EQ will be more important than your IQ. Your ability to cultivate, nurture, and to build relationships at work, at home, and in the community will be everything. I don't care how smart you are. If you have the personality of a box of rocks, you ain't going nowhere. There are a lot of smart people, and plenty of them are smarter than you. People do business with people that they know, that they respect, all things being equal. You are who you say you are, and you can do what you say you can do. But most importantly, people do business with people that they like. I don't care what it is that you do. There are at least 10 people that can do what you do, and by the way, a few of them can do it better than you. And the reason I choose to do business with you versus the other 10 choices I have is because I know you, I respect you, and I like you. When is the last time you did a piece of serious business with somebody you hated? Oh no. Not in America. I have options and I have choices. And I don't care what you got going on, I don't like you. And if I don't like you / trust you, we have nothing. Relationships are critically important. You're going to have to spend 75% of your time in life, through every passage of your life, working on relationships. This is biblical. John 5:30, a direct quote from Jesus Christ. John 5:30, a direct quote from Jesus Christ. And there are not that many direct quotes from Jesus Christ in the Bible. This is a direct quote. And Jesus said, I of my own self can do nothing. Now, this was Jesus. Jesus couldn't get it done on his own, by himself, in a vacuum. So what's up with you? Why would you think you could do anything significant, anything worth talking about on your own, by yourself, in a vacuum? You cannot. This passage says to me that we were born to network. That we were born to link together in a common bond of caring and sharing. That we learn how to cooperate with and through each other, and we know that cooperation, 1 and 1 makes 2. But the ultimate networker is a collaborator. And when you collaborate, 1 and 1 makes 11. So I'm looking to collaborate. Cooperation is good. Collaboration is better. Business is about relationships. Without relationships, you have no business. Without relationships, you have no business being in business. In fact, the business you're really in case no one has ever told you, is the business of building relationships. That's the business you are really in. So not only must you learn the art and science, it's a soft science, It's mostly an art. There's some skills, there's some things that you can learn, but you must learn the science of cultivating, nurturing, and building relationships. A book I recommend, other than Success Runs in Our Race, which I wrote 25 years ago, The Complete Guide to Effective Networking in the African American Community. It is a modern-day classic. It is required reading in 57 historically black colleges. It is the book that started the networking conversation and ultimately started the networking movement in Black America. Read the book if you haven't. I followed that up 5 years later with a book called Race for Success, the 10 Best Business Opportunities for Blacks in America, in which I predicted 20 years ago that financial education and financial literacy would be one of the biggest opportunities for business for black people in America. I'll pick up on that. I'll put a pin in that, talk a little bit more about that later, and talk a lot about it at the Power Networking Conference. Also know that friends are critically important because it's God's way of apologizing for your relatives. You can pick your friends. You cannot pick your relatives. So God, in his infinite wisdom, understood that you would need that. Let me say that differently. Let me say it in business terms. This is what I've learned in my 73 years of living. You can make a sale and make a commission. Or you can make a friend and make a fortune. I've chosen for my 73 years of 3 years of living to make friends, and I've made a fortune by teaching and serving them first before I sell them anything. And it was touched on so beautifully by almost everybody that talked about networking, that is the first and foremost principle of effective networking. I define networking for black people in Success Runs in Our Race 25 years ago. And I said that the first principle of networking, the first and foremost principle of networking, because most people were networking the wrong way. They were networking to get something. Wrong. You network to give. You said that beautifully too. You network to give. And this is biblical, because if you ain't giving, you ain't getting. If you have nothing, it's because you've given nothing. That you cannot take out of life that which you have not put into life, just as you cannot take out of the bank that which you have not put into the bank. Now, if you don't believe me, you just run on over to Bank of America and try to take something from them white people that you have not given them. Protect your brand. And you are a brand. Everybody in here is a brand. Know that your smile is your logo. Your personality is your business card. And how you leave others feeling after having an experience with you becomes your trademark. It ain't complicated. Don't make it complicated. Life ain't complicated. Keep it simple. Let me say that another way. Complexity is the enemy of execution. The more complex you make something, the less likely people are either to understand it or do it. It's not complicated. Don't make it complicated. People tend to make things complicated for a couple of reasons. The first reason people tend to make things complicated is so that they don't have to do it. So the more complicated I could make something, the more reasons I have for not doing it.
Right.
Here's another reason people tend to make things complicated, certain people, is to control power. So the more complicated I could make something, the less likely you are to understand it, and the more power I have over it and you. Let me give you an example. Credit default swaps, swatches, and derivatives. That was the foundation for the 2008 economic crisis. Only a handful of people at the Goldman Sachs of the world understood what a swatch was, what a derivative was, and what a credit default swap was. And it almost brought this country to its knees. Don't make it complicated. Whatever it is, whatever business you're going into, don't make it complicated. Keep it simple. So let me say this. Do I have 11 minutes, or is 11 minutes have gone by? Okay. She's rough on, she's rough on these speakers here. I just want to be sure. So let me just say this next thing, and still be loved. Ideas are great. Black people are the most creative people on the planet. We are improvisers. We understand, I think we even invented improvisation. We're awesome at it. We invented jazz, America's only contribution to music, a significant contribution to the world of music. I'm excluding rap. It's getting better, and a couple of other things, but jazz. And jazz is about what? Improvisation. It's really what it's about. I'm a huge fan of jazz. At my age, I'm old guard, old school. So I grew up admiring the Coltrane's and the Miles Davis. And if you were to hear John Coltrane, for example, play My Favorite Things, one of the great classic jazz albums of all time, if he were to play My Favorite Things right here today, and you were to ask him to play My Favorite Things tomorrow, he could not play the exact same thing that he played today, because 70% of it, beyond the melody of My Favorite Things, is improvisation. So we are incredible in terms of creating ideas. We have an idea per minute. That's a beautiful thing. But what I've learned is that while ideas are great, systems are better. Ideas are great, but systems are better. If you really want to make money, convert your idea into a system. Everything is a system. I say this to young brothers all the time when I'm speaking in schools, in colleges, and in high schools. And I said, if you want to get an A, you got to hang out with people who are getting A's, because you only have the system for getting C's. Because if you understood the system for getting A's, your ass would be getting A's. So you need to hang with somebody that understands the system for getting an A, and I promise you it's different than the system for getting a C. Everything is a system. In 1949, 1950, there were hamburger joints all over America. And each one did its own thing. And everybody was a small entrepreneur. And then Ray Kroc came along right out here, met the McDonald's brothers, loved their hamburger. They were doing good business, but they didn't have a system for replicating their hamburgers and serving more people. He created a system to replicate their hamburger. So systems are good for what? Replication, duplication, and scaling. And now there are 200,000 McDonald's restaurants all over the world. And 1 billion of them are eaten every day. I don't eat them. That's another story at another time. But ideas are great, brothers and sisters, but systems are better. So we need to start focusing on building systems. And this is what we're going to be talking about and teaching at the Power Networking Conference. Moving from cooperation to collaboration and building systems. The next part of the talk, I'm going to talk about the two major introductions that we will be making at the Power Networking Conference this year. One of them was mentioned in my introduction. WINGS, Financial Education Centers, is a system. That's what it is. It's a system that will be replicated and duplicated in 15,000 historically black churches over the next decade. It's a system. Think system. Finally, and I've talked about this before, and I heard everyone who was up here do their little introduction, and that's a wonderful thing. A proper introduction is also a system. You've got about 20 seconds to get a person's attention and to keep it when you're out networking. And so you got to get right to it. It's called the elevator pitch. You've heard that term before, but there's a system for a proper, highly effective elevator pitch. Who you are, where you're from, what you do. Who you are, where you're from, what you do. Now, if you don't know the answer to those 3 questions, I invite you to leave. You really shouldn't be here. The final 2 questions are the most important questions because when you're talking to people, they are tuned into one radio station, WIIFM. What's in it for me? That's what they're listening for. They will never say that to you, but they're listening for that. So the last 2 parts of the 5-part system is, how do you add real value? Then prove it to me. Quantify it. And that's the end of it. It's about 75, 80 words. 20 seconds or so. Hi, I'm Dr. Greorge Fraser from Cleveland, Ohio, by way of Brooklyn, New York. I'm the CEO and founder of Fraser Net Incorporated. I write books and speak on economic development and networking. I help people turn acquaintances into friends and contacts into contracts. And over the last 30 years, I've helped over 10,000 people aggregate about $750 million in new business. Good to meet you. Whoop, there it is. That's it. That's 76 words, took about 18 seconds. Now, if that does not pique your interest, you won't ask me for my business card, and I'll move on to the next person. If that piques your interest, because that's all you're really trying to do, is to pique the other person's interest so that they will want to know more about you later. Yeah. Not now. Too many people to get to. Got a lot of work to do. So, I'm at 19 minutes and 50 seconds. I'm going to close with my provocative networking statement. If you can't build with them, don't chill with them. All right.